Out of the dusty and clustered urban settlements of Mzansi, townships are born, culture is born. We not raised by the invasions of 1652, laws of 1948, and the Act of 1950. Although we are systematic casualties, we remain steadfast and pregnant with ideas, visions, and the urge to exceed the wider gates that lead to destruction. It's 2023. Classified culture is born. We are delighted to serve you.
Classified. Hayi vele sesicalile ke.
NQF Level 10 podcast is back. It's called Classified Culture Podcast. It's the virtual Imbizo now. The 7th general elections will be held in South Africa on the 29th of May 2024 to elect the new National Assembly as well as the provincial legislature in each province. So, voter apathy has been a challenge and a pandemic in South Africa, with different political parties not being able to convince the youth as well as disgruntled employees, disgruntled citizens to go and register to vote. So, we've invited a representative from the majority party, which is the ANC, to respond to some of the challenges that we have raised on our previous episode, such as unemployment, housing, poverty, drugs, as well as crime. So this is the official first edition of our election series that we'll be doing up until the elections. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Ofentse. I am the RTT member of the ANC Women's League Young Women's Desk. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I also want to thank the audience for tuning in on today's podcast.
Thank you very much. And of course, as is the norm, I'm not alone. Debu is here, is behind the scenes. Sydney the Vision is here, and Sai is here as well. And the first question that I'd like to pose to you is for anyone who does not understand the political jargon, the fancy political names. What is it, about these elections that people need to look forward to?
Well, firstly, before I start with that, it's very important to explain that over the past 30 years, the ANC has made some notable achievements, but we're not the kind of organization that only learns from its accomplishments. We do acknowledge that we've made mistakes. We've acknowledged that over the past years we have setbacks that were not in our control. So, as an organization that had to shift from being a freedom fighting organization to a government, we are also still learning. You see, 30 years, as much as you may think is a long time, it's only 3 decades. And we need to remember that we are fixing 5 centuries worth of damage. And in the 30 years that we've done, if you compare us to our peers in the continent, we've done extremely well. That is why we've decided...
Who would be your peers? Would you count Libya as your peers?
With Libya, I want us to not involve states such as Libya because we are not using the same system of government like your democracy. I'm talking about countries that are our neighbors who experienced colonization in the same way that we did. If you compare us to them, many of them were free from colonial rule before us. But when we attained democracy in 1994, we have made some strides. We didn't go into a civil war. We immediately got to work and we implemented our programs. So that is why in the past 30 years, the ANC has notified you to know we have these 6 aspects that we must prioritize.
Before we get to that,
Yes.
right? Please tell us about yourself first.
Okay.
We should have started there.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what do you want to know? I mean,
Tell us about yourself. What do you do? Your position
I
in the
work
ANC. When did you
for-
cut teeth in politics?
Well, you know what? I've always been someone who was politically conscious. But because, Mina, I went to a multiracial school, my politics was marred by the atmosphere I was in. And it is only after you leave a multiracial environment and you face the world that you realize, man, Yazile government is not bad, but there's still a lot to be done, you see. For example, when I needed to go to a university, that was when I saw that, our government is trying its best, but social exclusion is still there. We have people who are graduates, but they are not getting jobs. And it's not because the government doesn't want them to be employed, but it's because the private sector, which is predominantly owned by the minority, is intentionally excluding the majority, which is black.
Yeah, but we've got a black government.
That
They've provided that environment for the private sector.
I beg to differ.
No.
I beg to differ. Let me explain why.
There's legislations and regulations
But the
that
government-
private sector needs to abide by.
True.
So if you're going to provide an environment and infrastructure whereby they can undermine our laws, then we cannot blame, the private sector, because the ground is fertile for them.
I hear
not
what
to
you're saying,
not to
and
want
I
to
agree with
transform.
you. I
Yeah.
agree with what you're saying, but I want you to remember that there is no government that will take pride in seeing its very own ilk suffering. But at the end of the day, the reality is you cannot force me to hire people that I don't want to hire in my own company. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if I own a restaurant and I want to hire people and take advantage of them, I can use the loopholes there. Remember, there was once a propaganda they were spreading against South Africans, and they were saying that South Africans are lazy and they don't want to work. But it's not that South Africans were lazy. South Africans come from a long history of being taken for a ride. And after 1994, we never wanted to settle for anything less than we were worth. And they took advantage of that. So I think it's very unfair to place the blame on the government over that, because this is a government that is already trying to put things in place to secure the majority of its country. Because you see, we can start with the fact that for you to make it in this global economy, you need to have an education. So what has the government done? They've given you basic education for free, and you now have NSFAS that will put you in tertiary education. But your stumbling block is the private sector.
What is ANC planning to do?
That's where I was coming
about
to.
the private sector?
One of the main priorities of
Yeah.
the ANC is to create jobs for South Africans.
How?
By firstly investing in the presidential employment surplus or stimulus. Things such as your Gauteng youth brigades are catering people within the community. You apply on a link and you work at a local
But
school.
South Africa, has a reality at the moment within our communities, especially where we are from Soweto, of huge unemployment.
Not
You know what I mean?
well,
Currently.
yes, well,
Yeah. We've
at
got
the time.
we've got the highest youth unemployment
And we are working on it.
in the world.
Not in the world. I think I want us to be
Well,
realistic.
the statistic says that in the world.
Okay, but
Yeah.
if you look at what we are doing now as the ANC, ever since COVID, we have implemented programs such as the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, and young people who have accumulated as little as matric are now earning 4,040 rands. They don't need to take a taxi to go to that job. They can work and study at the same time. We have the Gauteng Youth Brigades where they are teacher assistants. We have internships in government institutions by the support of the GCRA. The government is trying. It's just that we have to first implement. And one thing you must remember.
Yeah, but it cannot be a perpetual, implementation.
No.
Otherwise, it will remain that an idea. You know what I mean? But that will not be put into effect.
It's not an idea because we
30
do
years,
have young people who are currently working in schools.
30 years is a long time, okay? And then I understand, against the backdrop of what we've been through. I mean, I have to acknowledge 400 years of oppression, of colonization. It will be very difficult, to break it, in 30 years. But still, 30 years, according to me, it is sufficient, to be able to put into practice, some of the things that will be pro-black, pro-previously disadvantaged, like employment, like transformation.
Okay, but now I want you to remember, in every country, when you move from one regime to another, you must remember that you must remind the citizens to have a building spirit and be patient. You have an economy that has been controlled for 5 centuries. You cannot take it back peacefully in a period of 3 decades. That we must be realistic. And the approach that we have taken as the ANC is to take a peaceful approach, because we've seen what happens to people who take things by force. You take the country, you set the country back unnecessarily. And I personally think that our government has done well in the aspect that In the meantime, whilst they are working on the economy.
You spoke about the stimulus,
Yes,
response.
let me just finish this
Okay,
point.
no problem.
When
Yeah.
when we implemented the issue of regaining the economy, what did we do? We also provided a welfare program for those who are currently struggling. You can get a welfare check or SASA grant if you are an elderly person. You can get it if you are a single parent or not a single parent. If you are unemployed and you have children, you can get it. We have children who don't need to buy uniforms. You get the uniform at schools. The schools have meals, nutritious meals. They also have uniforms. So there is no person who will ever say, my child cannot go to school because my mother is unemployed. And that's the government's fault. Even now, we are allocating 370 rands for people who want to apply. Who want to apply.
Okay, then what is the plan of the ANC?
The plan of the ANC is to tackle unemployment.
I just want to finish this question. What is the plan of ANC to ensure that there is sustainable jobs, right? And not so much, dependency on the government in the form of these grants that you're referring to. What is the plan of the ANC if you win this election, right? For sustainable jobs, especially amongst the youth.
Okay, so as I explained before, the government has formulated programs for unemployment at the moment for young people.
Are those sustainable?
I think they are sustainable,
So are you saying
given the fact that you are a young person who is not looking to stay there permanently. In the meantime, whilst you're studying, you are employing yourself and getting experience. Because at the end of the day, when you go and apply at these jobs, they'll tell you that they want 6 to 8 years experience, number one. Secondly, we implemented Nasispan. Nasispan doesn't only accommodate young people from the ages of 18 to 35. Remember, I told you that we are not an organization that learns from its accomplishments. We learn from our mistakes. And we saw that the mistake we made is that we allowed companies and certain employment institutions to say after 35 you can't be employed. So we are fixing that now, Wuti. That is why we had people participating in the Nasispan and applying.
Are
matter.
those permanent jobs?
Well, the jobs are not permanent, but we are working on that. But in the meantime, you can rely on the fact that for the next 6 months, you are settled. We're not the kind of government that will just leave people unemployed and, we leave them destitute. In the meantime, whilst you are studying, at least you have a source of income. Another priority that we have prioritized is to invest in industries. We know that not everyone wants to be employed. Some people want to participate in the economy and they want to employ. And we have a lot of local businesses in this country. We have an industry.
Before we get into the local, businesses, and things like that, I asked you, are you going to have like policy, which will attempt to redress, what is happening currently with the private sector? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Our president explained explicitly that in the next 5 years, what is part of priority 1 is to engage the private sector.
Okay.
So that upon the engagement, they can then come to a common ground where we can have our young graduates who have been unemployed for such a long period of time would be considered by these private sectors.
So South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. Why? 30 years post, apartheid.
I beg to differ that it's the most unequal society. And
you differ with statistics.
Let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because in our country, from a history where women were never allowed to have managerial positions, we have a lot of women of color who are occupying managerial positions. We implemented affirmative action.
Let me get
and
this
now,
right.
even now, we are still aiming to address.
Let me get it right. You are saying that South Africa is not the most unequal society in the world.
I personally think that inequality is everywhere. We cannot condemn South Africa.
But South Africa, specifically South Africa, has been ranked as number 1.
And that's
according to the UN,
no.
the most unequal society in the world.
And you know what? I still maintain that I beg to differ.
Okay.
Because even if you look at the USA, as many years as they've been in power, they've never produced a female president.
But they produced a black president.
No, we've also produced a black president.
Yeah, we are in majority, obviously. This is Africa.
No, that's
black people are in majority here.
They are in majority, but they don't control. They never controlled the politics and the economy.
And I'm challenging you now, right? In Africa, in South Africa, the majority of the population is black. However, those that were oppressed, the previously disadvantaged, the Africans, the colored, as well as the Indians, they are not, represented, right, in all categories and levels, especially in corporate.
But
let's agree.
But this boils down to my point.
And that is the characteristics of an environment or a country which is unequal.
This boils down to my point. This boils down to my point where I'm explaining to you that, remember, we are fixing 5 centuries of colonial damage. And you cannot expect us to fix it in 3 decades, even if it may not sound like something we want to accept, but it's a fact. And I personally think, as a young black woman in this country, I think our government has tried and is still continuing to do so. Because even now, the ANC maintains that we want to perpetuate and get to a non-sexist, a non-racial society, and we are getting there. Today here you have a podcast. You could have never dreamed of having a podcast before 1990. But the media back then would never allow you to sit here and challenge its government. And here you are, freely so. We have practiced democracy successfully.
Yeah.
And it's the same with you. I would never be given a platform before 1994 to challenge a man on politics, issues of politics and the economy. And here I am engaging you on the economy. And we are doing it in any language. I can speak any language if I want to, and you won't feel offended.
No, of course
that
I
should
won't.
tell you already the progress we've made as a country.
I want us to localize it just a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Sure. To an ordinary person who's watching this podcast at the moment, from any township, it can be Alexander, it can be Soweto, it can be Togoza, right? Some of them, they've got voter apathy, they're no longer interested even in voting because they are hopeless because of drugs, because of unemployment, because of poverty. The ANC is the 1st of June 2024. The ANC has won elections. What is the immediate thing that you're going to do for those type of people?
As I've said, remember, the main issue with drugs and crime and people having voter empathy is the fact that the youth was idling and they had nothing to do. So part of the priorities that I've mentioned, we have the PYE, we have the GYB, the GCRA. There is no excuse for youth to be idling. Last year, we gave the youth 3 opportunities. The first opportunity to apply, they could use a link that was provided by Comrade Panyaza Lisufi to apply for Nasispan. Even after that...
Wasn't that electioneering?
No, it wasn't, because it's
That's so convenient because it was close to the elections.
It's okay. He can say that. We can say that, and I won't disagree with you on that. But Comrade Panyaza Lisufi has always maintained that he wants to make the life better for the black child. Even when he was in the education department, he's the one who decided that it is mandatory for schools to buy stationery. Parents cannot keep kids at home just because they don't have stationery like they used to before. I don't think it's electioneering. I just think this is a hardworking man and he's in a hardworking organization and he's doing well for the organization. And I'm happy Mopanyaza Lisufi. I see no one else but him at the job that he's doing.
All right. So now I want to give you time, right? Against the backdrop of all the social issues that we're experiencing in our township, unemployment, I mentioned, poverty, gender-based, violence. What is the ANC's manifesto saying about those factors?
The main thing, you've touched on a topic that I'm very passionate about, gender-based violence. Gender-based violence, I still think that it's not only an issue of gender, but it's an issue of economics. The people or the perpetrators who are responsible for perpetuating gender-based violence are using their economic power or their financial muscle to control their victims. And so the ANC now, with these employment stimulus initiatives and with these aims to invest in industries and to localize industries. We are now giving people, especially women, we have maintained ukuthi we are going to have a set-aside strategy for women, particularly women, people of color,
do you
and
think,
people with disabilities.
but do you think that patriarchy, obviously South Africa has a history of patriarchy. Do you think that it has to do, with the levels, of GBV that are happening within our communities?
Yes, because
other than the economic factors that you're referring to, although there is a connection, of course.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'll tell you from my analysis. If you look at the history of South Africa, we come from a violent society. We've been fighting for years. And even then, when oppression was happening, still when you look at the black man, the black man is oppressed first by the white man and then the black man. The black woman is oppressed by the white man, by the white woman, by the black man, and then herself. You understand? So this has been something that was enforced and entrenched in us for years, for centuries. So it is only now where we are reinforcing this change, that we are equals. And our government has maintained that even if you look at the leadership of the ANC, there is no other party or organization that has as many female leaders as we do.
So now I grew up Komapeta,
Okay.
that's where I come from. So back then when I grew up, like most of the stores in our township, like the township, stores, they were owned by our uncles, local business people. What is the position of the ANC in your manifesto, which speaks about, local, shops? Because at the moment they're being owned by foreigners. What is the position of ANC regarding that?
As I said, the second priority of the ANC is to invest in local industries. So the ANC has started an initiative where they want to open more opportunities, not only for well-established tuck shops that were owned by local people in townships, but even for young aspiring people whom I stated previously, Uguti, black women and people with disabilities will now be given opportunities by the government using certain stimulus initiatives to support these businesses. I even wanted to state to you that we want to have a black industrial program where we support 2,000 small businesses. That's the aim of what the ANC wants. Apart from the fact that we've stated that we want to create 2.5 million jobs, but for those who want to start, who are entrepreneurs, the ANC wants to create an initiative or program, a sustainable program that will allow local businesses to also be job providers to local businesses.
So the foreign-owned spaza shops will continue to operate in their model beyond ANC winning these elections.
What I'm saying to you is that the ANC, part of the two priorities, I mentioned the first one, which is to put South Africans at work. That's the priority of the ANC. It's a priority to put South Africans at work. The second one is to tackle local industries and to create an economy or economic freedom for these local businesses to provide jobs, which will also boil down to what I said when I mentioned that we want to give South Africans jobs.
And
so,
how are you going to do that?
So the ANC has decided...
According to your priorities there, how are you going to do that?
The ANC has pledged Uguti they are going to discuss and just initially just call these local businesses and to ask them, Uguti, what do you want from us? It's an open policy that we're starting as the ANC. Okay. So I wanted to say, Uguti, Tina, we want to increase investment not only in strategic industries such as your steel, but also in future industries such as your textile. I mean, la elokshin, textile is a big thing. People are wearing a t-shirt or like about this is group. Yeah. Those are the people we want to target. So, your food industries, like how we did Nevilagazi Street. We want to invest in businesses like that because we know there's a huge market in townships for such industries.
Consistent with my questions, regarding the foreign-owned shops, some of the challenges that people find in establishing these township stores, right? or spaza shops, if you like, is the lack of land. We don't have enough land. We don't have sufficient land, right? And number two is capital, right? Through your priorities in the manifesto, how are you going to cap that? For someone who has business acumen, someone who's interested into entrepreneurship, but however, they do not have the land, they do not have the capital. What are you saying to those people?
Part of the second priority of the ANC is to speed up or accelerate redistribution of land. That's part of our second priority. We want to combat inequality in terms of land, inequality in terms of economics. So yes, we already did have a plan for redistribution in place, but we want to now speed up the pace because we know that approximately 1 million South Africans, we successfully were able to redistribute land to them. So it's something that we've realized that the system we're using is not bad. It's probably just the pace. So part of the second priority is to speed up the pace of that priority.
All right. So now I'm going to ask you a national question. You've got a right not to respond. Okay. Will the ANC deal with the immigration problem in South Africa? Is part of your priorities there that you have in your manifesto, dealing with the question of immigration?
I'm not answering that.
All right. So within the communities within the community where you reside, what is it that you have identified, as the challenges, whether it be youth, whether it be, elderly people? What is it that you've identified as the challenges, and how are you going to overcome that through your manifesto?
Hey, I don't understand your question.
So
I don't understand your question.
in the community that you reside to at the moment, what are the three things that you can identify as the challenges? Right? I mean, we mentioned a lot of challenges when we started this podcast. We mentioned unemployment, we mentioned poverty, we mentioned drugs. What are the three key things you can identify from your own community that are the challenges, and how will you overcome through these priorities that you're referring to?
I think it's your question. You boiling down 6 priorities to 3 things. We have 6 priorities. We understand. So I mean, if you're saying what are the 3 key things, I've already mentioned to you that we want to create jobs
In
because
your
young
own
people-
community.
Yeah, in our community.
I'm from two
Yeah, I'm
communities.
extending-
I'm from
Mfulo.
Mabetla, I'm from Klipspruit Extension 2. And I will tell you...
Nonetheless,
Yeah.
townships, the culture in townships is the same. Yeah, but the culture in townships is the same. All townships or all areas in this country are affected by unemployment, of which that's what the ANC wants to tackle.
Okay.
We also affected by lack of support in small businesses. The ANC wants to cater to that. Do you understand? We want to address issues of gender inequality in townships. We also have that. The ANC has added that as part of our priorities. So I'm just saying that for you to boil down to 3 things when we have so
No,
many
you
issues,
can mention 5.
Yeah,
Just for the purpose of time, I was just saying 3. But you are
Okay.
welcome to mention 6 if you like.
I'm just saying to you that the ANC is not going to boil itself down to 3 priorities when we've identified that we have 6.
Okay.
And we aim to implement them in this next coming 5 years.
No. That was my attempt, to keep on localizing these questions. Hence, I asked you that particular question. So, in the light of everything that we have discussed so far, what would you say within our communities are the success of the ANC? What has ANC been able to achieve in the last 30 years?
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Might I answer
Yeah.
this question?
No, you can just give me a brief summary of the success of the ANC, because I've got a follow-up question after that.
Okay. As I've stated, that within our townships, we have free basic education in our townships. And it's quality basic education. And our children in our townships can get a nutritious breakfast and a nutritious lunch at school. They don't need to buy stationery. Uniform is provided by schools. We have social grants. And our social grant program is successful. We've never had a situation, I don't remember in my personal experience, never mind what I'm affiliated to. I don't remember anyone not having access to social welfare. If you are born in South Africa and you are a South African citizen, you qualify to enjoy every single benefit of being a South African. If you are sick, you go to your local clinic and you'll be assisted. If you have a toothache, we have dentists at local clinics. We have psychologists at local clinics. We support family planning. We are pro-choice. Our clinics give you free HIV counseling and testing and free antiretroviral treatment. Our antiretroviral treatment program is so successful that if you don't want to collect medication at the local clinic, you can collect it elsewhere. You don't need to worry about the stigma of having HIV. We have been doing a great job as the ANC. Even the way we tackled COVID when the GCRA gave us the initiative to have COVID screeners. We had young people who at least had means of income for that duration. Young people who are unable to work anymore due to what happened were able to go and earn themselves a living. And some of them are still there under the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative.
Thank you.
As well as the Gauteng Youth Brigades.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer.
Yes.
Now the follow-up question. What are the failures of the ANC?
I wouldn't say that they failures. I am saying that I don't think that the ANC...
You mentioned the successes of the ANC, over the last 30 years that have been the ruling party, post-apartheid in the democratic South Africa. Now I'm asking you, within these 30 years, what are the failures of the ANC?
I do not want to say that the ANC has failures because as far as I'm concerned...
We can say what are the limitations, we can say the pitfalls.
I'm just saying that, remember, the ANC-led government is tackling and correcting 5 centuries worth of damage. And it's only been 3 decades. So you cannot say it's a failure. The time allocated for us to fix these problems, I don't think it's personally enough. At the moment, we still have to address many issues that the ANC inherited. You understand? So I don't think that the ANC failed. I just think that the ANC still has a lot to do, though we've done a lot. And in everything that we've said we want to implement, I think we've done well as the organization.
Does your manifesto, speaks about industrializing?
Of course. I mean, I did explain to you that we want to build industries and we want our industries to be inclusive. I did say that the industries we want to invest in are your strategic ones, such as your steel, such as your textile. We want to have a set aside program for women who want to be in the industries, in these industries of steel, of farming, of whatever industry they want to be in. We want to also accommodate people of color. We want to accommodate people with disabilities.
But tell our viewers why they need to vote for ANC in the upcoming elections.
Because the ANC has made a lot of accomplishments in the past 30 years. We have a successful social grants program. We've implemented free basic education. We have a successful health service program. I mean, what other place do you know where you can go to any hospital where they won't ask you questions, they won't want money from you, you can get any procedure done, you can go to a dentist.
I mean, we've got a backlog, of so many cancer patients who are still waiting for chemotherapy at the moment. I mean, we all know about the long queues, in our clinics. At times when you go with an illness, then you get Panados or whatever. So surely everyone can agree with me when it comes to our local clinics.
No. I think
so you cannot say that they're functioning well.
Let me respond to that. Your question in terms of the long lines, for me, I find it to be very biased because even when you go to a private surgery, there are lines. In any health institution, there are lines. I don't think it's because it's a public institution or it's private. Any health institution has a line. You can even go, I won't mention private facilities, but I don't remember walking in and walking out.
So you don't see any challenges
I
with
don't-
with public clinics
I-
and public hospitals at the moment?
Our public health institution is doing the best that it can, considering the population that we have.
You don't see any pitfalls.
I'm saying there is no institution that doesn't have pitfalls, but the ANC is doing its best for the fact that we are providing medication for free. And that very Panado is not free. And these people who are issuing Panados
so you're
are not
saying-
issuing them at the top of their head. These are qualified health
So
practitioners.
you're saying the public health system, it is working at its optimum level.
I think they are doing the best that they can, considering the level and the population that they have to cater for.
All right.
And that's a fact. I think, Mina, I'm not going to sound naive or anything, but I've never went to a public institution and felt ashamed.
All right.
Because the fact that even family planning, you can get counseling, free HIV testing, you can decide whether you want to keep a child or not, because we are pro body, pro choice. We're okay. I just think that you need to, you as a person, you need to be realistic in what the government owes you.
I'm going to be to apologize for interjecting, but for the sake of time, I'm going to ask you the last questions, so that we can have another interview now. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to sell the ANC. What are your last words to our viewers, to the unemployed, to the people, that are, on, drugs, they are hopeless, they don't want to vote, they don't want to register. What is your message to those people?
I'm saying that the ANC for the past 30 years has achieved notable achievements. And I think it's the only organization that cares for its people. We have given young Africans and young women an opportunity to study for free. We've given them an opportunity to just be the best that they want to be. We are not the kind of organization that suppresses our people. For democracy, in terms of democracy and justice, we're doing well. The fact that we can engage on issues of gender equality, gender-based violence, I feel like that our country is doing very well. And I also think that when it comes to our welfare system, we are doing relevantly well. And we are a government that listens. We're a government that engages. The fact that we've ironed down all the issues we have in this country to
2
6
minutes.
priorities, it should tell you already that
You
we're
are
a
left
government
with a
that
minute.
consistently follows the things that its people want from them. So there's no organization in the ANC. but
Thank you very
vote
much.
ANC.
Thank you very much for honoring our invite. We really appreciate it, and then we hope that we can build a relationship whereby you can come back post elections, so that we can tell people about the elections.
No problem. Thank you for having
Thank you.
me. Okay.